things. You know, a social worker is supposed to put the complete picture of the case in the social worker reports to the judge. So, for example,
Right.
your daughter was in the hospital in a life or death situation. Obviously, in my opinion, that should be in the report so that the judge gets a complete picture and background of the case. If a social worker puts in things that aren't true or withholds information that should be put in the report, in my humble opinion, that's a violation of the family's civil rights. And you should speak to an attorney about that. The issue about recording a social worker, I don't believe, and I may be wrong, I don't believe there's any law with respect to not taping a social worker. So if he tells you that, I think he's just BSing you. There is a law that you can't tape him unless he knows that. And what I tell a lot of clients to do, and what I have done on behalf of all clients, is I've written the social worker and the social worker's attorney, generally the social worker's attorney, and I tell them, hey, any communication between my client and your client will be tape recorded or video recorded if they're at my client's home. So please let your social workers know that. There's nothing illegal per se about taping someone. And you know what? And in some cases, I tell them, hey, you can't speak to my client unless it is tape or video recorded. And then they tell me, oh, we're not going to speak to your client then. And then they go to court and say the mother refused to talk to the social worker. Not that she had an obligation to do it anyway, but that's not the truth. The truth is you can talk to the mother. It's just going to be recorded because, sometimes you folks have the tendency of saying things that aren't accurate or just outright lying.
Right.
So I would suggest that you think about doing that. I don't know all of the details, but here's one thing that you should always consider. And that is talking to an attorney, at least getting the free consultation. If a social worker went into your home, went into your closet and found that secret hiding place underneath the floorboards and took $10 million out of there and walked out of your house, what would you do? You'd call Johnny Cochran if he was alive. But when these social workers come in your home and they take your children and your grandchildren, there's a hesitation about getting an attorney. And I know there are a lot of reasons for that. But these children are worth more than $10 million, and you should be talking to an attorney, even if it's just a free consultation. Because the social worker will never know that you went to talk to an attorney unless you tell him, because it's confidential. The attorney won't tell anyone. So get the information you need to protect your family. And if it's been 2 years and these children haven't been returned to the parents or some relative, there's something going on that's wrong. So, you're the grandmother. I can just generally ask you, well, why aren't the children placed with you? Why aren't they placed with a family member?
I passed background. I've given them family members' names, and they keep saying they're not going to give them to me. He just, like I said, he doesn't put. I told him you've had plenty of time to correct your report, but yet you haven't. I said you put information in there that's beneficial to you, but not beneficial to my daughter. Or us. I said so. We're kind of like. He just runs the show, and I've just been going along with it, and I'm fed up at this point. I'm really, really fed up.
You know what? Do you have a pen and a piece of paper?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to give you some information that you should look up on the internet and read, and then I'm going to give you my telephone number because you should call me for a free consultation. The first thing you should Google is Welfare and Institutions Code, Section 309. And I want you to read that, and I want the audience to read that for themselves. Basically what it says, no, not basically, what it says is children have to be placed with relatives. All right? And then there's another section that gives certain relatives priority over other relatives. If you're a grandmother, you're in that priority group.
Right.
So unless you've been, convicted of child abuse of some minor child or something like that, there's no reason why you shouldn't have your grandchildren.
Right.
There are
That's what
those.
I've been fighting.
There are those that opine, and it is also my humble opinion, that a lot of times when children aren't placed with relatives, it's because of money. And, I get a lot of feedback from that about, oh, that's crazy, Davis, you don't know what you're talking about. But if you watch or read or do some research about the federal scheme, the financial incentive is to keep the children out of the home and to keep the children out of relative placement. I'm kind of partial to this relative placement issue. I was raised by my grandparents, my paternal grandmother and grandfather. So when it comes to these relative placement issues, there's kind of a soft spot in my heart for them, and I try to focus on those. I try to help as many relatives as I can. The only thing that's going to help you is if you do the following things. Number 1, consult with an attorney. Number 2, you and your attorney have to file what's called a JV 285 form. You can Google that. Number 3, you're going to have to file a 388 petition, and it's kind of a motion to have the children placed with you as the grandmother. These two forms seem to be self-explanatory. However, if you try to do them yourself, the odds are that you're not going to be successful. Have I ever seen a civilian file a 388 and be successful? Yes, I have. More times than not, though, you're not going to be successful because you're not going to know exactly what to do. In my opinion, you can't just fill out the form. There's some other things that need to go with it that aren't even mentioned in the form. So take into consideration those things. So Google those things, read them, talk to an attorney. You can call me. We give free consultations, and see if you can, get your grandchildren placed with you where they belong. Okay?
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for calling, and keep listening.
All right. I will.